and I wrote it in 2 weeks. It was this sexy cowboy city girl trope thing. We laughed the whole way through because it was just a joke. And at the end of the 2 weeks, I put it up on Amazon as a self-published writer, and it became a best-selling beach read that year. I'm not afraid of AI. I see it as a tool, a really helpful one. I was actually contacted by Amazon recently to take part in a beta test for audiobooks.
Mhm.
Well, I had one of my series put onto audiobook and it cost me a bomb. I think it cost me like
Yeah.
£8,000.
Wow. Yeah.
And this was what, 7 years ago or something?
Yeah.
And I had to go to the studio and I had to hire a voice actress and it was all
Yeah.
this stuff. And now Amazon has this new feature, an AI reader, and I put up all my other books on Amazon using their AI feature as part of this beta test.
Yeah.
And I've got to tell you, it's pretty good.
Welcome to this week's episode of Akoni Tech Talks. We are joined by Marysol today. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hi, Francesca. Thank you for having me.
And in true Akoni Tech Talk style, we're going to go back to the beginning and start with sharing a bit about your journey into writing. So, Marysol, how did you go from small town girl in Canada to a best-selling romance author?
Totally by accident, pretty much on a dare and as a joke. I had a couple of friends who I was in sort of a writing competition with, an official one. It's called National Novel Writing Month. It's on a couple of times a year. And the challenge is to write 50,000 words in 30 days. And I had done, and I didn't know what to do next. There was still time in the 30 days. And a couple of my friends said, well, why don't you just write the opposite of what you usually write, which was quite heavy contemporary literature. So we settled on I would just write a romance. And so I had 2 weeks and I wrote it in 2 weeks. It was this sexy cowboy city girl trope thing. We laughed the whole way through because it was just a joke. And at the end of the 2 weeks, I put it up on Amazon as a self-published writer, and it became a best-selling beach read that year. And thus my career as a romance writer was launched.
I love it. And so you've published over 30 books now, across multiple series. So going from, like you say, that initial joke to over 30 books. But what was that
Yes.
process like, and how has your approach to writing kind of evolved over time?
Well, I wrote that first book in 2014. So you can see it's been a decade. So I just published my 32nd book 2 weeks ago. So it is 32 books over 10 years. And the process has completely changed for me personally because as it was a joke in the beginning, excuse me, I had no plan. I had no structure. I had no nothing. And in fact, when the book became a best-selling book, my friends said, well, you've got to go onto Facebook now and like put up an author's page because people will be looking for you. So I did that. And the first thing people said was, well, where's book two? Where's the next sexy cowboy book? And I thought, there isn't one. Like, I had no plan. So it was very fly by the seat of my jeans, as we say in Canada, for the first couple of years, because I was still looking for employment in my field, which was upper management. And so I considered myself a business person, like a manager working for other people. And this writing thing was this joke. And as my sales continued and my followers and fans kind of, snowballed, I decided to move into full-time romance writing. So now what I do is when I start a series, because I have 6 separate series, I plan it beginning to end. I know sort of I have every book planned out in advance. And it's especially important in the first book to introduce the relevant characters and relationships. And even though they're on the periphery or in the background, or they're kind of mentioned as somebody who works with our main characters, I know later they'll be important. So I really do take the long look right from the word go. And I didn't do that in the beginning because I didn't know this was going to be my job.
And romance is such a powerful and deeply personal genre. And I mean, what
Mm.
draws you to it, and how do you approach writing about love and sensuality and relationships?
Well, it wasn't my first choice as
Hmm.
what I would write about. When I was younger, I wanted to be a writer. But I was thinking more like, because I'm Canadian, I was thinking more like a Margaret Atwood. She was my heroine back then.
Yeah.
She continues to be one of the best writers I've ever personally read. So, what it draws me to the romance now isn't the romance, it's still the storytelling. It's the
Hmm.
character development. It's the writing a relationship from beginning to end. Because, for example, in an 8 book series, the couple that I introduce in the first book can tell their story. You see their relationship continuing through all 8 books. So it
Yeah.
doesn't just kind of stop at book one, it carries on. And that's what attracts me to the romance is the slow building of a really loving, open, genuine, transparent, honest relationship. So I like to bring two people together and then help them build a relationship with open communication and trust. So I'm
Mhm.
really attracted to the character building
Yeah.
and advancing a plot through an entire series,
Mhm.
which is a unique challenge to take a relationship literally from beginning to end. But it's what I
Yes.
love to do. So that's what
Mhm.
attracts me to romance is the storytelling of a really good, healthy dynamic that has problems, but
Mhm.
with communication, they work through it. And that's really important to me to show that this isn't a fairy tale like they lived happily ever after. Not
Yeah.
really. They encounter challenges, and I
Yeah.
show how that can be modeled in a really healthy, productive way.
Absolutely. And speaking of challenges, how have digital platforms and self-publishing tools changed the book industry, not even just for you, but as an author, looking at the industry as a whole, especially independent authors like yourself? I
Yes.
mean, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges and advantages of self-publishing in today's digital landscape?
Well, when I started, almost 11 years ago now, Amazon was the only player in town when it came to self-publishing. All of these things like Draft to Digital and all these other companies, they weren't around yet. So you kind of had to deal with Amazon. And the process was so complicated to upload a book and to create a cover. And then if you wanted a print version, it was a whole separate system that Amazon cooperated with, but really tenuously, and everything was just all over the place. So that's why I focused on just ebooks because it was on Amazon, it was simple enough, right? So it was a godsend for self-published writers because the whole thing of having to approach a publishing house and submit a query and try to get an agent and then take a really small advance and then it doesn't do well, so you actually end up owing the company money. So it was just such a godsend because you were just your own boss and you set your own timeline and you put it out there. And then Facebook was the way to advertise back then. So you had a Facebook following and you put up the link to your ebook on Facebook and it took off. It was
Yeah.
actually relatively simple and straightforward.
Mm.
Um, I have a friend back in Canada who is actually a proper, what we would call in the old days, a proper writer, meaning she has an agent and she works with a publishing house and she's in bricks and mortar sort of bookshops. But she can only write a book sort of every 18 months because the process is that long in terms of the editing and then the second editing and then the third and the fourth. And it's not even her book anymore by the end. Whatever she truly wanted to write has been so looked over and picked over from beginning to end. And
Mhm.
then when it's not promoted in any way that she controls. She's told where to go and when. And her most recent book, the promotion was really, they really fumbled it. They really dropped the ball. And there
Mhm.
was nothing she could do about it. She was locked into a contract. So I find that modern self-publishing tools give you so much freedom, so much control. And if you really want to write a book, I don't see the upside of going through traditional publishing routes. I know that's still a lot of writers' dreams to be published by Random House or Penguin or whatever. But I can honestly say for me, if it's a long shot, and even if you do get it, it's not necessarily the best thing for you or your book.
Yeah. And you've touched on, things like Facebook and using that as a
Mm.
space to advertise, but with social media and digital marketing playing such a huge role in book sales today, how have you personally adapted your marketing strategy as an author?
Well, it's interesting because I told you a little while ago when we first spoke about me coming on here, I was a bit hesitant because I was in a really unhealthy relationship, ironically enough, for a romance writer. But I dropped out of the game for about 3 years, like completely. I wasn't writing at all for a lot of reasons to do with him kind of sabotaging my work and not wanting me to have any financial freedom. So after I left him and I returned to the world of self-publishing, the whole landscape had changed because even when I left, like left, I make it sound like I did it voluntarily, when I was sort of forced out of it, Facebook was still the biggest player in the game, where you put up a link on Facebook, you have a following of 1,000 people, you have a best-selling book, easy. So when I came back and I wrote a book and I put the link up on Facebook, nobody was seeing it. And these are people who are followers of mine, like fans. And
Mhm.
that's when I realized that the Facebook algorithm had completely changed.
Yeah.
A very small percentage of people see anything that you post on their feed. And that was when I thought, oh my God, what is this Instagram thing? Because I had an Instagram account, but I had done nothing with it because it wasn't important several years ago. Now, Instagram is crucially important. So is having a YouTube channel. TikTok, for me, not so much because my readers don't tend to be on TikTok, but it is important, I know, for a lot of people who are targeting a younger market. But even the younger people that I target still find me on YouTube and Instagram.
Yeah.
So that's been the big change for me. And it's been a huge learning curve, Francesca. I don't mind
Yeah.
telling you.
Yeah.
Because when I remember Instagram, when I first got the account, it was just about pretty pictures. The more
Yeah.
visual, the better. And now it's about reels, it's about stories, it's about
Mhm.
captions, it's about including links, it's about setting up a funnel, it's about automatic responses. And
Yeah.
that's a whole new game. And
Mhm.
I'm playing it better, but first I had to learn it. And
Yeah.
it was all new to me, which tells me that things have changed that quickly, that rapidly. So it's just I'm playing catch up right now, and I'm okay with that.
And speaking of the way things evolve and rapid changes, obviously we come on to AI. Now, how
Mm.
do you see AI and automation influencing the publishing industry? Do you think it's a tool that can help, or does it pose risks to creativity?
I think both, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest with you. However, the way that I look at it is I remember 10 years ago when this whole self-publishing thing came onto Amazon. And I remember the screaming about it because the market was going to be flooded with a bunch of really crap self-published books. And it was, to be fair. There's a lot of stuff out there that's self-published that's awful, horribly written, just like it's not it shouldn't be out there.
Yeah.
But people don't buy that stuff. That's the
Hmm.
thing. Amazon has a feature that they didn't used to have, which is you can get a preview. You can read a sample and you look at it and you say, wow, this is incomprehensible. I'm not spending my $3 or my £3 on this. It's not
Yeah.
happening. So you just read it out. And I feel like there's a certain element of that with AI where people are genuinely afraid that AI can write entire books, and it can. I looked into pseudo-write out of curiosity. I'm never going to use AI to write a book, but I was like, what's the big deal? Is it that dangerous? And I'm going to tell you what, it wrote
Mm-hmm.
a great chapter for me, but
Really?
it didn't sound like me.
Yeah.
It wasn't my voice. So I think AI is one of those things that if you treat it like a starting point, and
Yeah.
then you build on it, you make it your own. I think it's helpful. you know? But I don't think that 100% AI written books can ever replace an author with a strange voice. This
Mm,
whole "the sky is falling," I heard it 10 years ago when
yeah.
self-publishing started.
Yeah.
We were going to destroy the real traditional book market. We have not.
Mm, yeah.
Self-publishing hasn't touched the traditional book market. I was in Waterstones a few weeks ago with a girlfriend of
Mhm.
mine, and we were walking around. The place was packed. People love
Yeah.
paper books.
Yeah.
So a self-published ebook on Amazon has not brought down the paper
Yeah.
industry, right?
Mhm.
I'm not afraid of AI. I see it as a tool, a really helpful one. I was actually contacted by Amazon recently to take part in a beta test for audiobooks.
Mhm.
Well, I I I um I had one of my series put onto audiobook and it cost me a bomb. I think it cost me like
Yeah.
£8,000.
Wow. Yeah.
And this was what, 7 years ago or something?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it cost me a bomb. And I had to go to the studio and I had to hire a voice actress. And it was all
Yeah.
this stuff. And now Amazon has this new feature, an AI reader, and I put up all my other books on Amazon using their AI feature as part of this beta test.
Yeah.
And I've got to tell you, it's pretty good. Like
Mhm.
the emotion of it, and this is really important in romance, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And the sex scenes are not cringy, like it's well done. But
Mhm.
there are a couple of places where it's you can tell it's not a real person. For example, things like like if somebody says mm-hmm, AI doesn't say mm-hmm. The voice says mm-hmm. Like it really. So I think AI is one of those things that I'm happy to use. I'm not threatened by it or afraid of it.
Yeah.
But I can understand why people who are just starting out and don't have a library and a voice are worried about it. I see both sides of it really.
Mhm. Yes. And you also just touched on audiobooks, which sort of have exploded in popularity. But how do you think they're changing the way readers engage with romance novels?
Well, I mean, my readers prefer ebooks,
Yeah.
and they've been begging me for paper books, which I'm just in the process of formatting, which is interesting because I started in ebooks, then I put up audiobooks, and I'm doing paper books last.
Yeah.
Um, I find people like audiobooks because they can listen to them and enjoy them when they're driving, when
Mhm.
they're in bed, when they're cleaning, when they're doing the dishes.
Mhm.
Audiobooks are great because you can do them whilst you're doing something else. Whereas,
Yeah.
of course, a book you gotta have your hands free. So I think one of the reasons audiobooks have taken off so well is because they fit so seamlessly into your
Mhm.
day-to-day life. And then if there's something happens, your phone rings, you push pause
Yeah.
and you haven't lost it, you haven't lost your place, whatever.
Yeah.
You just press resume and it picks up exactly. So I think audiobooks are quite magical, actually.
Yeah.
And I think there was a time again where it was important to have a voice actress or a voice actor. But again,
Mm.
I think AI is going to change that game, just
Mhm.
like Amazon changed the self-publishing game for
Yeah.
writers. So I'm actually quite interested to see where this AI audiobook feature goes. And for me personally,
Mm.
but also in general, I'd be very curious to see.
Mhm. And with these new sort of tech-driven features, as well as platforms, interactive
Mhm.
romance apps, do you think, the way storytelling is sort of gamified in a sense is the future of romance novels?
I honestly can't tell you anything about
Yeah.
that. All I can tell you is the future of romance novels is the same as the present and the past of romance novels, which is if people don't buy into your characters' relationships, it doesn't matter what gimmick you use, what feature, what tool, what
Yeah.
AI, whatever, what app, none of it matters. If people don't buy
Mm.
into the story of these two people who are supposed to fall in love and you're supposed to root for them,
Yeah.
then it doesn't matter what bells and whistles you put it on. The future of romance, as far as I'm concerned, is can you tell a good story? Can you get people invested in your characters? Do they care what happens to your fictional people? And
Yeah.
if you can get them on that emotional level, then whatever tech you put in place after, from zero to every tech out there, people will go with it. But
Hmm.
you've got to have that genuine core of heart in your story,
Yeah.
because technology is great to distribute and do promotion and stuff, but it will not bring a beating heart to your story. It cannot do that. Only the writer can do that.
Yeah. And speaking of sort of bringing the stories to life, more and more books are being adapted into TV shows and films, video games. But do you think technology is making it easier for authors to break into those industries and spread their name more?
I think for sure social media makes it amazing. I think it's incredibly possible for an author who is just really savvy at social media can get a whole lot of attention. They can garner interest
Yeah.
by doing the right thing and knowing how to play that game. And I absolutely see opportunities coming to people who are willing to be a lot more brave and creative and smart about their social media presence. So, doing podcasts, for example,
Yes.
is
Yeah.
something that was unheard of even sort of 4 years ago. I mean, you had to be somebody quite famous to be a podcast guest. And now you just have to be somebody with some legitimate experience and a
Mhm.
legitimate message. And that's amazing. So I honestly believe that if you kind of hit the right social media tone at the right time, you attract the right person's attention on any given day, 100% it's possible. I do believe that. And I always kind of rejoice for people who kind of get a big opportunity for a film or whatever,
Yeah.
just because I feel like they've put in the work, they've done the time, and the lucky star just decided
Hmm.
to rise over them. So I think it's great that people are
Hmm.
being given opportunities like that.
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually. One of my favorite authors has a Facebook group, and she's a romance writer as well. And she puts in the book, in the group, sorry, who inspired the characters. And I always find it fascinating because um when we're reading books, we don't necessarily have who she picked as the vision for that character in our mind. We create our own sort of fantasy of, oh, this
Mhm.
is who I imagine this person to be. But if you were to adapt your series, for TV or film, who would you choose to play your characters?
Oh boy. Well, I guess it depends which series we're talking about.
Yes,
Simply
yeah.
because I have series with sexy cowboys and
Mhm.
bodyguards and MC guys and MMA fighters. So I guess if we're going to talk about, for example, the Motorcycle Club series,
Yeah.
which it's the one I'm focused on now because
Hmm.
my other series are finished. This one is sort of half
Yes.
done. Um, I picture kind of, uh, do you know who, I'm trying to think of his name now. I can see him. He's a British actor who I feel like his name is James, and he was in a really great short series where he played a really, really bad boy, and he kind of squares off against Pauline Quirk, who's a police officer. I can't think of his name now.
Oh, I feel
Well,
like
I
I've
might have to
got
look
to
this up.
Google it.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but I really picture him because he's tall, he's quite muscular, and I know he can play a real bad boy who is also vulnerable, not necessarily loving, because his character was a real bad seed. But I picture someone like that. I mean, actors who are kind of in their 30s and 40s, because
Yeah.
that's where a lot of my characters fall, but
Yeah.
they have to be a hard man, like a
Mhm.
very sort of dangerous edge to him.
Mhm.
However, they can be vulnerable with the right people in their lives. And
Oh,
that's a big thing for me.
yeah.
That's how my men are in my books.
Nice. And looking ahead, what excites you the most about the future of publishing and storytelling?
I just am excited to see where it goes. I think the thing about being a writer or any kind of creative person is you're always open to opportunity and you never stop being sort of curious
Mhm.
about where things go. And I think if you're a legitimately creative person, you always have this side to you. You're always learning, you're always developing, you're coming up with new ideas and storylines. And I, for one, think that the future of self-published writing is
Mm.
going, I mean, I think if I look back on it 3 years from today, it's going to look completely different. Like if we
Yeah.
go back just to Amazon again, they have so streamlined their process. In one place, you can create an ebook, a print book, and an audiobook in one place. That used to
Mhm.
be three separate things.
Yeah.
I mean, the audiobook beta test, I mean, it's a beta test. It used to be you had to create your audiobook on ACX and then
Mm.
link ACX to Amazon. Now it's all in-house. So what's going to come up next? What am I going to be able to do through my bookshelf in 3 years? I bet I could do ads. I bet I could do promotion. I bet I
Mhm.
can link my social media to my KDP account on Amazon, and I'll be able to send, like, hit publish, and it will go out across
Yeah.
social media. I would not be surprised if Amazon started to do something like that. They are so ahead of the curve when it comes
Mhm.
to providing options to writers. So if any of your listeners, and I know you've got a lot of young people listening, if any of you are keen to self-publish, I absolutely am telling you, it's so streamlined and organized on Amazon now, and I only see it getting better. I am excited to see what the giant conglomerate does next.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the perfect segue onto the trending in tech round. So, a
Okay.
recent article from the Times discussed the controversy surrounding a startup's plan to publish 8,000 books using AI next year. Now, as we've kind of touched on throughout the episode, it's ignited quite a debate around the role of artificial intelligence in the publishing industry, particularly
Mhm.
regarding concerns over quality, originality, and the impact on human authors. Now, supporters argue that AI can streamline the publishing process and create more accessible content, which critics worry could flood the market with low quality books and undermine the value of human creativity, which we've discussed. But
Mhm.
AI generated books are becoming a hot topic. As a self-published author, how do you feel about the rise of AI written novels? And, do you think it will probably foresee a point of a loss in original storytelling?
I think this is exactly what I was afraid of when I
Yeah.
first heard about AI. And
Mhm.
then when I go onto Amazon and I look at all the AI books there, and they're all quite short and they're all quite how to do this, how to do that, how to do this in 30 days. They're very much how-to books. And they're very easy to spot because they can be well written, but they're lacking some sort of soul or heart in them. In terms of the quality of the AI books, I think that the quality is just going to get better and better. I think it's reaching the
Mhm.
point now where AI has mined so many books that they can replicate a voice. I mean,
Yeah.
I saw an article that told you where you could go to see if AI had used a certain book. I put my name into the search engine, and of my
Yeah.
32 books, 28 have been mined by AI. So I know
Wow.
my books, yeah, I know my books are being used to
Mhm.
help other people write romance novels,
Mhm.
and they're going to write them. It takes me 3 months to write a book. They're going to write it in 2 days. I know
Yeah.
that. But I also know that I have written 32 books over 6 series. I've created original characters who all interact with each other over the series. My entire library is one gigantic spider web. And it's
Mhm.
that complicated and complex. AI could never replicate my 32 books. It doesn't matter how many prompts you give them, it would never be able to do what I did. I know
Mhm.
that. So my worry is that there will be a lot of crap kind of flooding into the market. I
Yeah.
think readers are smart enough. to buy or not buy. And that's what it comes down to. AI can put whatever it wants out there. Somebody still has to buy it.
Mhm.
And if you haven't got a really good, if we're talking about romance here,
Mm.
if there's no heart and there's no authenticity, I promise you romance readers aren't going to buy it. I can only
Yeah.
speak to that, really. So, but we're talking about human relationships. We're talking about hearts and souls. We're talking about people you have to buy into and love and want them to love each other. And from what I've seen of AI written romance, it lacks that authentic humanity.
Yeah.
So I'm not, even though my books have been mined, 28 out of 32 books, um, I'm not worried as a writer. I have enough confidence in my voice that, and my ability to tell complicated stories that is
Mhm.
fully a human factor that AI just doesn't have. You know, it might one day, but it does not now. And
Yeah.
as for 8,000 books flooding a
Mm.
market sort of next year, I just have to see what the quality of those books are and the
Yeah.
topics.
Absolutely. And Marysol, we come on to the final part of the podcast, which is the this or that round, where we find out your
Okay.
quick fire favorites. So if you had to
Okay.
pick iPhone or Samsung,
iPhone,
and Spotify or Apple,
Spotify,
Mhm. And Netflix or cinema,
the cinema every time.
and laptops or tablets,
Oh, laptop.
And ChatGPT or virtual reality.
ChatGPT, and I actually love ChatGPT because it's an amazing way to get ideas for Instagram posts. If you
Hmm.
and you can get 30 of them written in one go, and
Yeah.
then you tweak them, and it just saves you the trouble of having to type everything in on your phone to Instagram. So ChatGPT. I'm actually a huge fan of ChatGPT. If we're just talking about I
Yeah.
would never use it to write a book or anything else, but
Yeah.
I love it for social media and promotion. It's such a great tool.
It's great. And video calls or voice notes.
Oh, video calls. I
Hmm.
still need to be able to see people.
Exactly. And finally, if you could bring back one original piece of tech that's either now evolved or it no longer exists, what would it be and why?
See, this is where I'm gonna really date myself. But when I was little, the height of fun for a birthday party or a weekend with friends was my mom and dad would take us to the library and we would rent a movie projector. And we would
Oh,
also get the the movies would show up in these gigantic cans, like round
yeah.
cans, and you had to have a little lesson at the library how to load the movie and everything.
Yeah.
And I loved it because I loved the sound of it. It had a
Oh,
certain tick, 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 tick
yeah.
sound. And we had to set up a screen in our basement, and everybody lay on the floor and watched it. And it was amazing. It was just such a beautiful kind of, I don't know, there was something about it that was so great. And I just love movie projectors. Whenever I see one in a movie, like somebody's doing research
Yeah.
and they have to pull out the old, I just think, oh God, that was so wonderful. And I think it's just because it was such a huge part of my childhood. It was massive. And then along came, the thing with the gigantic thing you had to put into the video
Yeah.
machine that you rented. Everything was so big back then. Now everything's tiny. Everything was so big and it had weight and it had kind of a soul. It was amazing. So I
Mm,
do miss those times. I mean, I love my phone. I love my little MacBook.
yeah.
But I do sort of miss that having to lug the movie projector out from the library where you had to rent it because nobody owned one, and you'd lug it into the car and hold it in your lap so it didn't tip over. There was just that weight was amazing. It's kind of like a paper book. There's just something about the weight of physical objects that
Yeah.
I miss in modern life. I have to be honest.
Yeah.
Streamlined is great, light is great, but there's something about the weight of a movie projector for your
Yeah.
birthday party that was just
Oh,
so beautiful. Yeah.
yeah. I love the nostalgia of that, especially the noise as well. That's so
Tick
lovely.
tick tick tick. It's
Yeah.
like And then when the movie ended, it would flap as it continued because the movie was over, the tape was
Yeah.
over, and it would flap. Oh God, it was like, yeah, I
Oh,
remember it so clearly. I remember it as clearly as my mother's voice. That's
yeah,
how clear the sound is.
yeah,
So I do miss that. Yeah, I have
yeah.
to admit.
Oh, Mary, so that brings us to the end of this week's episode, but it's been
Okay.
an absolute joy chatting to you today. This has been right up my street. So thank you so much for joining us.
I so appreciate the interest, especially because your audience is kind of not who I normally speak to. I normally speak to women or other writers or
Yeah,
romance conferences. So I'm delighted to hear that you've got sort of people at college or learning who are interested maybe in self-publishing. Because what I have to say is if you're really keen, give it a go. Just give it a go. Because all the tools have been set out for you in a way they weren't set out for me in the beginning, and it's such a great thing to be able to do. So give it a shot. What's the worst that can
yeah.
happen?